Dave Zirin, I should point out, he is the host personality on SiriusXM Radio's very popular weekly show, Edge of Sports Radio. It airs on channel 92, I believe, on Sirius. And then if you have an XM, it's channel 208. That hasn't changed, right?
Yeah, that is correct, sir.
Okay, good. And thanks for being on. Let me tell you, I heard an interview you were doing, and as a former student athlete, Division III football and all that, you know, I heard you talk about the history of that term and the significance of this discussion we're having about forming unions and paying people and health care if folks get injured. Can you share that with this audience? Because I had never heard that before.
No, absolutely. And it's so important because recently, of course, the National Labor Relations Board ruled that the Northwestern football team were, in fact, workers and not student athletes. And
Right.
This shocked all the so-called experts because they believed that this was what they call settled law. And this settled law, this gets directly to your question, Joe, this settled law is rooted in the 1950s. This has been law for upwards of 60-plus years. And the reason why this was settled law, it all starts in the 1950s when the widow of a man named Ray Dennison, he died on the field of play. He was an NCAA football player. And his widow sues the NCAA to get workers' compensation, just because her loss was so tremendous.
Right.
And so what happened was the NCAA in court said, we owe you no workers' compensation, was not in fact a worker. He was what we call a student athlete.
And that's where that term began.
That is the root of the
that
term.
Okay.
Yes, exactly.
And what's the significance of that, of being declared a quote-unquote student athlete?
Well, what it immediately allows is that the NCAA and its member institutions don't have to grant you any of the basic labor rights that are afforded American workers, whether they're in unions or not. I mean, they have zero right to any sort of pay, first and foremost. That's very important. They have zero right to any sort of compensation or health benefits. They serve completely at the pleasure of the coach and of the athletic department, and their scholarships are only 1 year. You know, so what's so crazy about this, and this is why the settled law became such unsettled law, is that the game has changed so dramatically, not just since the 1950s, but even since the 1990s. I mean, look at where we live, Joe, where the University of Maryland is no longer in the ACC, it's in the Big Ten. Or Syracuse is no longer in the Big East, it's in the ACC. I mean, all of the traditional rivalries have been changed dramatically precisely because there's more money to be gained through building these mega conferences. But what that means is that the pressure, because the money is so great, $6 billion football contracts with ESPN getting signed for these college playoffs, is that there's this pressure on the quote-unquote student athlete to travel more, to devote more time in a given week to their training, to make sure that football and basketball, the two revenue-producing sports, are year-round endeavors and not just seasonal endeavors. And then, of course, you have the fact that the coaches and the administrators make insane amounts more than they did a generation ago.
Now, David,
I'm talking 100 times more.
This what do you call it, established law?
Settled law.
Settled law. Now, let me go back to that. So here's what I was thinking as you were talking. The student athlete, this history, person dies on a football field. Widow says, oh, my God, I want workers' comp. No, you can't because you're really not employed. So in other words, if a coach got injured on a football field for whatever reason, a coach would get workers' compensation, correct?
Exactly. Absolutely.
All right. If a referee got injured or died on a football field, the referee would get compensation, correct?
Absolutely.
So everybody, it sounds like, on the field of play associated with this sport could get workers' compensation except the people playing the sport.
Yes, that is absolutely correct. Just like everybody on the field, like the people you mentioned, coaches, referees, in some way, shape, or form get paid by whether it's Nike money or Adidas money, all the shoe companies that are sponsoring, except for the people who are actually wearing those shoes.
Wow.
Just another angle on it. I mean, and I'll tell you this, Joe, and I've said that, I'm not just saying this because I'm on your show. I said this last night on MSNBC. I'm saying it everywhere. It's like we have to understand this also as this is really the NCAA now exists as it's an organized theft of black wealth and black education.
Mm-hmm.
And if we don't look at this through a lens that takes into account either institutionalized racism or poverty, then we're doing this whole discussion a disservice.
Because mostly, look, we don't shy away from that most of these athletes are African Americans, and we don't shy away from the fact that a lot of folk are in the forefront or the back of their minds, David. Might be one of the reasons that they oppose this, because I've been hearing some really crazy stuff on all kinds of talk shows here of why they shouldn't be paid, and here's one of them that I'm hearing. They're getting a scholarship. Now, we had a gentleman call in who said he had a friend. They grew up in the same neighborhood, went to the same school. His friend played ball. And he got a scholarship, but he didn't. His friend got a scholarship, but he didn't. He had to work as a student. He had to study, and his friend was like. And I used your argument that I heard you say that. Whoa, wait a minute. This is a year-round activity for these guys.
Exactly.
I mean, for a basketball player, for example, you middle of the week, you go play, hop on a bus or a plane. And you get back to campus at 1 a.m, but you still got to be up for your early morning class.
No, exactly right.
And a student doesn't have to do that. I mean, you might want to expound on that.
Yeah, of course. And I want to say again that people have to realize that they're not getting a 4-year ride or a 5-year ride.
Right.
They get 1-year rides that are renewed on an annual basis at the pleasure of the coach. That means you could have a 4.0 GPA, be class president, and if the coach doesn't want you there, you're gone.
Oh, now let me ask you this. Because see, this is different from when I played, and folks would pull money together, whether it was a student grant or whatever. Coaches would do that, to get you in. But what I hear you saying, and correct me, David, if I'm wrong, that let's say a coach you're on the team, and the coach has limited scholarships he can offer, correct?
Yes.
But he has a great recruit. I mean, like a high school All-American, top #1 player in the state, and he needs that scholarship. What you're telling us is that coach can take that scholarship from that already established player and make it available to an incoming freshman.
Oh, yes, absolutely. There are always people at the end of a roster who are sometimes referred to as dead weight. And there are people there who are there. They're not going to play that much, but you do need people to actually take those scholarships. And, hey, you never know when you need a third-string center. And I'm talking about football center.
Yeah.
And
or
it's harder to do in
basketball, for that matter, too, yeah.
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 And so it's like you always have some folks who you can cut if you want to get that freshman in there, that hot freshman, that new recruit. There'll always be space for the new person getting right off the bus.
So they could be a good student. They could be at top of their class. They could, but I don't care if they're an average student, but they're there. They want to get an education, and the coach can call them in and say, you know what, I'm not going to renew your scholarship. You're a second stringer. You're a third stringer.
Exactly.
And now let me ask you, because I'm thinking, look, I remember seniors on my football team, and they were on the team all 4 years, never played. They were one of these kind of players that the last game, the coach might let them in. I mean, schools do that all the time. But the coach could, your senior year, say you're out.
Yes.
Yeah.
Technically, yes.
Yeah.
But particularly at these, I mean, I don't know how it would. It probably worked a little differently at a Division III school, but at the D1 schools, at the real football factory.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you're there at the pleasure of the coach, because that's the thing about it, is that this is big money. This is big business. And this is why, the famous phrase from Abe Lincoln, a house divided cannot stand. This is why I think the NCAA is starting to fall apart, because you have two economic systems, and you said it so beautifully before with the whole workers' comp issue about how who can get it and who can't. It's a house divided, because for coaches, it is freewheeling, free market capitalism. It is you can be the wolfiest wolf of Wall Street, jump from job to job, max out your earning potential, retire on a big boat. But for the players, it's indentured servitude. You have no rights, you earn no income, and yet you're generating all of this money, and you're told to just be grateful and shut your mouth. And you can't have two economic systems exist side by side and expect the system to hold, because the center just will not hold.
All right, final question, and that is, let's say the players' union is upheld. The Northwestern University football players have been recognized, but let's say it's upheld. It goes through the courts, the process. It's going to be a long process.
Yes.
And what would this mean to those players?
For the current players, probably not too much, but going forward, what it means is that the cartel gets cracked, because the NCAA's only power is that it is the controlling authority over all of college sports. As soon as that controlling authority gets cracked, all of a sudden you can have different schools offer different things to different high schools. Maybe a school could say, hey, if you come here, you get to actually get your education for 4 years. And that could be a point of attraction to somebody who's more serious about school than about their athletics. So it immediately opens things up and provides more options for the players themselves.
And does it mean collective bargaining?
I mean, at the schools that choose to organize, yes, it would mean collective bargaining, and they could bargain over their health care. They could bargain over due process. That's a huge issue for the Northwestern players, is just the idea that they can get suspended or kicked out for nothing. So it really is about, more than anything else, Joe, it's about getting a seat at the table.
Yeah. All right. Thank you
Instead
so
of being
much.
the help.
All right. Thank you so much. Again, let's remind people, Sirius Channel 92, XM Channel 208, 208. It is Edge of Sports Radio. What time? What day?
It's today at 4 p.m., and then it's repeated at 5 p.m., and people can follow me on Twitter at Edge of Sports, and I got to say, it's always an honor to be on the show, Joe. Thank you for having me.
It's our honor, because I think you've given people some insight that they hadn't thought about. So much misinformation out here, and with this NCAA March Madness going on. I mean, it's very important for folks to get beyond the hoopla of the event. Let me ask you, your bracket's been destroyed yet?
Oh, absolutely wrecked from here to Kingdom Come.
Okay, well,
as bombed out and depleted, as Dave Chappelle would say.
Yeah, I'm pushing for Dayton. I was born and raised in Dayton, so that's
awesome.
I have to stay. I stay with my home team, although we didn't give a damn about the Dayton Flyers. They didn't recruit too many of us in my neighborhood. But anyhow, that's another story. Okay.
I want to hear that story.
I'll tell you one day. Okay, thank you. I appreciate it.